finishing off the team previews. All 32 teams are available on the team preview playlist. You can check it in the description or go to the profile and check out all 32 teams, all fantasy relevant players. And if you want the best fantasy football advice here on this platform, make sure you hit the subscribe button, drop a like on this video. So I'll be going over the Washington Commanders, who went over a major overhaul this season. Had Sam Howell last year, Jacoby Brissett in at times. They are both out of here. We have a new regime in place. This thing's going to look a lot different for the Washington Commanders. So to start the season off, obviously they had to go and address the quarterback position. They did that in the draft. But before that, they got Cliff Kingsbury, who we saw kind of be a quarterback whisperer in his time in college. Did not do so well with the Arizona Cardinals. End up not being the coach there anymore, right? And now is the offensive coordinator here for the Commanders. So obviously he'll do good things for the quarterback position, and that's a good thing because the team invested in quarterback at the draft and took Jayden Daniels with the number 2 pick overall. So obviously Cliff Kingsbury brings this air raid shotgun offense. And you get a former Heisman winner, or you get a Heisman winner, not a former. You get a Heisman winner in Jayden Daniels, who had the most yards in college football last year, and the only player with 40-plus touchdowns passing, with 10 rushing touchdowns. So he's the only player ever 12,000 yards passing and 3,000 yards rushing in his career. So a lot of good things when it comes to Jayden Daniels. He has pretty good size and obviously the speed that you want to see. So when it comes to fantasy, obviously it's tough to trust rookies, okay? It is. And rookies, sometimes they come in and play really well. We saw C.J. Stroud last year, and then other times they don't live up to expectations. We talk about guys like Bryce Young or maybe a Zach Wilson. But I think this is a really good setup for Jayden Daniels and a player that I'm going to be targeting in drafts, in all my drafts. Whether he's a backup or he's my super flex QB2, maybe even QB1, depending on how the rest of the team is looking, Jayden Daniels is the type of player that could be a league winner when it's all said and done. You know, we look at quarterback position, and typically the guys that finish in the top 10 or 12 either throw for a lot of yards or they have a really big rushing component. And Jayden Daniels is the type of quarterback that can rush for 600 to 800 yards in his rookie year. Think like Lamar Light or what Lamar did even early on in his career. That's what we're getting with Jayden Daniels. Plus, he's a prolific passer and set up with really nice veteran weapons, as I'll get into here later. So when it comes to Jayden Daniels, like if you have a single QB league and you want to wait on the quarterback position, you can pair up him with another safe quarterback and feel really good about your option. But when it just comes to Jayden Daniels in general, I think he'll have an amazing rookie year. Set up for success, good coaching around him, good playmaking around him. This could be a really nice season for Jayden Daniels on the ground and in the air. So I'm sold. I'm sold on Jayden Daniels being the Commanders quarterback. If you're in redraft, I think these next 2 to 3 years are going to be very nice. Obviously, you have to start worrying about injury when it comes to mobile quarterbacks that tend to use their legs a little bit more, and especially he has a little bit of a thinner frame outside. He's not like an Anthony Richardson size, so you do have to worry about him holding up over the course of the season. We've seen Lamar get banged up at times. Very similar here with Jayden Daniels, okay? But I expect nothing but good things from him early and often in his career. All right, let's get to the running back position. And Brian Robinson led this backfield last year. He was the RB21 in 15 games, so very good running back last year. Had a good season for where he was drafted. He was drafted in like the back end RB3 category, so that mid, like 28 to 34 range, somewhere around there. Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson were drafted. Antonio Gibson's out of here. But Brian Robinson had 733 rushing yards last year, 5 rushing touchdowns. He also was involved in the passing game a little bit more than we expected. 36 receptions, 368 yards, and 4 touchdowns in the air. So he played well. The only thing with Brian Robinson is that at some points of the year, he was kind of touchdown dependent, depending on how Antonio Gibson was playing, right? Like when he was playing well, he saw less work in the passing game. And then obviously the team, was going through the air a lot coming from behind with Sam Howell, who threw for a crazy amount of yards. But this team didn't need him every single game. And so Brian Robinson had 6 single-digit games. So, and 3 20-point games. It was a little inconsistent across the board for him. So he had the upside, but he also had some downside. And now there's a new offense. Obviously, this fits a little bit more of what he was in college when it comes to like running out of this air raid shotgun style offense. But this could still be a good value here for Brian Robinson if you're able to get him as like your RB3 or RB4 after you've addressed a lot of other positions. So he's still going to be the starting back, even though he's in a timeshare. This is still the lead back in this backfield. I'm not like overly anxious to draft him, but he seems like one of the safer players that may fall in drafts just because of the name, because he's a regular name and he's kind of a regular talent. So obviously this isn't a guy I'd want as like my starting RB2, but this is a player that I would want as like maybe a flex or maybe a bye week piece somewhere in there as my RB3 or RB4. Another player I think fits this mold, Austin Ekeler. We're used to this guy being a first-round draft pick, and he had a really down season last year, man. A lot of social media stuff with him, running slow. He was the RB26, and we were drafting this guy as a top 5 back consensusly last season. And, with the Chargers, he played well for his time there, but he kind of overachieved in that role. He was kind of thought to be like a smaller pass catching back, was a late round pick and exceeded all expectations. So became a fantasy fixture. And then last season dealt with some injuries that slowed him up, high ankle sprain, and it nagged with him throughout the whole time in his contract year. He had dealt with the trade rumors earlier that offseason. So fresh start for Austin Ekeler, who, still for fantasy purposes, he wasn't great, but he was a flex type play. And at points of last year, he looked really good from weeks 8 to week 10. He looked like the Ekeler we knew and loved. That's it. A lot of people were buying Austin Ekeler at that time, thinking that they could get a return on value, but he only ended up playing 14 games, obviously dealing with the ankle and then, dealing with the coaching regime change towards the end of the season. He could be a sneaky value in Washington. I think he could be a really sneaky value. He had a career low of 3.5 yards per carry. So if we get anything better than Austin Ekeler off a high ankle sprain, the worst case scenario is that he's going to be involved in the passing game like he was in LA, 51 catches, 436 yards, and a touchdown in the receiving game. He had 100 catches the year before that. So it's like we know we can be involved. This team has been looking for that. I think Austin Ekeler is a nice RB3 flex, RB3 flex, not RB2, RB3 flex type candidate. And he could have some sneaky value this year, especially if this ground game improves with him behind it. All right, let's get into the receivers real quick. Terry McLaurin, we know what Terry McLaurin is. He's 75 to 80 catch guy. Always been the top 20, 25-ish receiver. He finished last season with 79 catches, 1,002 yards, and 4 touchdowns. We know what Terry McLaurin is at this, and he's in his prime right now. The only thing with Terry McLaurin is that with Jayden Daniels at quarterback, are we really going to see enough touchdowns to justify like moving him up into the top 20? Are we going to see an uptick in receptions? Is he going to hit the 100 reception marker? It's just I don't really see that in this offense. Now, the offense could help, like Cliff Kingsbury could focus on getting him the ball, but he's going to spread it out, and Jayden Daniels is going to rely a lot on his legs as well. So I think we kind of know what Terry McLaurin is at this stage, probably somewhere in the top 25, going to be drafted just shortly outside of that because there's not a lot of ceiling. When it comes to Terry McLaurin, we know what we're getting on an annual basis. Healthy, going to be around 1,000 yards, going to be around 75, 80 catches, going to be around 5 touchdowns. So not a whole lot of upside when it comes to Terry McLaurin, unfortunately. There's a little upside with the other receiver there that was drafted in the first round in 2022, Jahan Dotson. We have not seen the breakout that a lot of people expected. I haven't been huge on Jahan Dotson, but there's a lot of people that like what he does on the football field. Last year, 49 catches, 518 yards, 4 touchdowns. The only thing is I'm just not, unless there's a little bit of a breakout, like I just don't really see the jump for him being the number 2 receiver in this offense, not really being the possession guy, not really being just a necessary piece. He's not like a huge body, 5'11", like he's not this big red zone threat either. So I don't know. There's potential here for like a 3rd-year breakout for receivers. That used to be a thing more so than it is now, but there's still potential for that, kind of like a post-hype sleeper. I just don't really see a whole lot of value outside of him being a first-round draft pick. That's really it. So, Curtis Samuel's gone, so there's going to be some available targets, but this offense is going to look different under Cliff Kingsbury. And, last year he had 5 double-digit games, 5. So, you're kind of hoping for like a little bit more than that at your receiver position, especially in PPR leagues. So, I don't know. I'm kind of out on Jahan Dotson unless I'm getting him for free at the very end of my draft and there's not really anything else. I know that he's going to be a very easy drop come week 1 or week 2. So if you draft him, just know by week 1 or week 2, if he's not getting 5-6 catches or doesn't score a touchdown, you're probably going to drop him anyway for whoever is hot week 1 or week 2. So I think there's a chance he could have a breakout type season, like be better in this offense. I'm just not betting on it, and I'm not wanting to reach on him. So he's a name I'll probably look at on the waiver wire early on, or if he hits, congratulations, it'll be on somebody else's team. But Dotson, I still think he could be a productive receiver, but for fantasy purposes, I'm out. And then the team in the 3rd round drafted Luke McCaffrey. Obviously, he's Christian McCaffrey's brother. Nice frame, 6'2", 189, ran a 4.46. The only thing is he was at Rice. He didn't have any 1,000-yard seasons. He was close, but he didn't have any 1,000-yard seasons. He did have 1,300 yards in his 13 touchdowns in his senior season, though. So there's potential here for him to take on a bigger role. The thing is, he is going to be the 3rd in line at least for targets if you're not counting the running back or tight end position. But he's another weapon for this team. And unless Jayden Daniels is throwing for 4,000 yards in his rookie year, which I think he's going to be somewhere closer to the 3,000 to 3,500 range, unless he's throwing for an exorbitant amount of yards, we're probably not going to see Luke McCaffrey do anything special this season unless he leapfrogs Jahan Dotson and takes up that target share. So I think Luke McCaffrey will be a good football player, but in his rookie year and redraft, I probably would stay away. This seems more like a hype situation. People wanting to take advantage, like who's next in line for targets. It's going to be a different offense. So obviously Terry McLaurin and Dotson, they've been there longer, but that doesn't mean anything with the new regime. Luke McCaffrey was their handpicked guy in the 3rd round. I think he'll have a role. I'm just not expecting major things out of him. A lot of people like him to be like this year's Puka Nacua. I don't see it. So he could prove me wrong. That'd be fine. I'd be okay with that. But for redraft purposes, I'm going to stay away. All right, and then let's get into the tight ends. Zach Ertz was signed in the offseason. I know everybody's going to talk about Ben Sinnott, right? But Zach Ertz was signed in this offseason, and he knows Cliff Kingsbury's offense from his time there in Arizona. The only thing is he's injury prone. But when Zach Ertz plays, he's normally pretty productive and commands a lot of targets. So at the tight end position, he'll probably still see 4 to 6 targets a game, which, that's solid production. Now, he's going to be outside the top 20, maybe even outside the top 25, 30, just depending on how ADP shakes out. But Zach Ertz has always been a productive tight end when he plays. It's just the fact he can't stay healthy. So, and I know he's there to groom Ben Sinnott, kind of like how he was in Arizona when they drafted Trey McBride in the 2nd round. Same thing happened with Ben Sinnott this year, drafted in the 2nd round. I think this is going to be, hey, let me help you learn the position a little quicker, get you up to speed. You could take over fully next year. I think Zach Ertz is probably on his way out here in the next year or two, but we'll have a role this season as long as he can stay healthy. So Zach Ertz, a name to just remember in case, you're in the early couple weeks and you need a tight end, something happens. Maybe you drafted in preseason and one of your tight ends gets hurt. Zach Ertz is a name that'll probably be floating around on waivers. Just a name to remember in a decent situation with a rookie quarterback and in an offense that he already knows. And then I talked about Ben Sinnott. He's, when we talk about like rookie tight ends, it's easy now to get excited about rookie tight ends and young tight ends in general when we kind of see like this changing of the guard. We see Trey McBride play well last year in Arizona. We saw Sam Laporta in his rookie year go crazy for the Detroit Lions. We also saw Dalton Kincaid start to play a role in the 2nd half of last season on the Bills. So I think it's really easy to get excited about tight ends, but just be careful because Zach Ertz is the starter on this Commanders team for right now. So when we talk about Ben Sinnott, he had 676 receiving yards last season. And it's like, yeah, that led K-State in receptions. They don't throw a whole lot, but at the end of the day, he's a receiving tight end that, is still going to take time. And he wasn't like 1,000-yard, 800 yards in college. So we have to kind of assume it's going to take him a while to get up to speed. And even with Trey McBride, it's like we saw flashes of his rookie year. It took another year for him to actually emerge. So I kind of expect that with Ben Sinnott. A lot of people are going to draft him thinking that they're getting this Laporta type, production out of him and that there's going to be like a sleeper value here. I don't see it on this team. I think there's other obstacles, like Trey McBride was one of the leading receivers for the Cardinals. Laporta was the 2nd in line for targets there in the passing game for the Lions. Ben Sinnott still has to deal with Terry McLaurin, either Dotson or McCaffrey. You got Austin Ekeler out the backfield. Zach Ertz is in front of him, just a lot of other parts of this offense. Plus, the quarterback isn't going to throw for, a significant amount of yards. So be careful with Benson. I think in Dynasty, he's an exciting prospect. You might be able to get him at a discount later on this season. So that does it for the Commanders, and that ends all 32 teams. If you haven't had a chance to watch all 32 teams, go back through. There's a playlist dedicated to all 32 teams and all fantasy relevant players. I'll be talking a lot more about fantasy football this offseason and guiding you throughout the rest of the regular season. I hope you enjoyed this content, put a lot of time into it. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.